morning, everyone. This is As You Pass By, and I'm James West. We're going to be looking at what was then known as the Stuyvesant Farm, which existed in the early 1600s and really continued in existence until about the 1840s in some form or another. They were starting to sell off portions of it before that. Something we're going to be doing in this episode is taking a look at some old maps of this area, and dating back to the early 1800s. Unfortunately, before that, there is not very much that is either accurate or very good detail. But there are some maps from the early 1800s that show some of the old roads that used to be down here and some of the old property lines that you can still, well, some of them you can still see. There are a couple of property lines that are perpendicular to where Stuyvesant Street used to be, because Stuyvesant Street used to go all the way to the river, to the East River from here. So, and we're gonna stop by those areas. Peter Stuyvesant is also buried in the cemetery that is attached to St. Mark's in the Bowery, which is on 2nd Avenue and 10th Street. And it still stands. There was an older church there that was the chapel of Peter Stuyvesant and the then farm. And his house would have been located slightly to the north on roughly 10th or 11th Street off of 2nd Avenue. That is long gone. That hasn't been in existence. In fact, I don't think there are even any drawings of it. His son Gerard had a house slightly to the south, also off of Bowery. And we'll be able to see some of the remnants of where those property lines were. And his son Christopher lived in the area where St. Mark's Church is. And as I mentioned earlier, Stuyvesant Street was, started at 3rd Avenue. Some say it really started at Broadway, and it extended all the way to the East River. So it was, much longer than it is today. Today it doesn't go past 2nd Avenue, but you can see there are some remnants of when it was a much longer street. So the sort of ongoing theme of As You Pass By is I like to take you places that you can actually see some remnant of the history that used to be there. There may not be a building that's still standing, but you can see what was there and realize that history is maybe right next to you, and when you walk by something, it may have significance that is hidden or is hidden. So it's for me, it's very exciting to be able to have a sort of poignant touchstone of history, so we can remember things that happened decades or centuries ago. And that's kind of the prevailing idea of As You Pass By, and why we go places and look at things that look maybe when you're walking around on the street like, oh, this isn't anything, but it is, and they have significance, and they can tell a story. The past can still come alive, and so I'm the interpreter of the past. So remember to like and subscribe, and also to comment in the comment section. I really like hearing your comments, and if you have any questions, or something doesn't seem right to you, or if you think I'm made an incorrect statement. Also, if you have any ideas for things you would like to see in future episodes, please let me know. I try to respond to everybody. I think I have so far. And anyway, it's always fun to get your comments. So please enjoy the remainder of the episode. We're here on Stuyvesant Street, which begins a little, just about a half a block over towards 3rd Avenue. That's 3rd Avenue, where you can see cars going in both directions, north and south. And Stuyvesant Street sort of merges into Astor Place, which at one time was called Sand Hill Road. My own personal theory is that there were a series of paths that and trails that went back to the even before the 1600s that were used by the Native Americans, and continued in use to this day, really. So here we are. This is a street that is sort of off of the main grid, and at one time it went all the way to the East River. This is the Hamilton Fish House, a relative of Peter Stuyvesant, and you can see up here where Stuyvesant Street comes to an end on 2nd Avenue. We are still on Stuyvesant Street. Comes to an end over here on 2nd Avenue. And this is St. Mark's in the Bowery, which is where Peter Stuyvesant is buried. His mansion, his first mansion, was somewhere around here. It's not exactly clear, but it was on the south side of 10th Street, which we're on right now. Well, we're not really on it. We're on Stuyvesant Street, but it's the next street over. It's a couple feet away. And his mansion burned down. In fact, most of the houses that were on the Peter Stuyvesant farm burned down in the 1700s. I think the last one to burn down was Gerard Stuyvesant's, which burned down in 1778. We are over here on 12th Street between 2nd and 1st Avenue. And I know it doesn't look like much, but you can see there's a slant to this building. The eastern wall of this building is on an unusual angle. And the reason for that is there used to be a cemetery here, which was directly adjacent to the Stuyvesant Street. The cemetery belonged to St. Mark's Church, and it was decommissioned probably around 1810, but it still appears in some maps, and we're going to take a look at one of them, and it even appears in a 1930 map. It's not identified as a cemetery, but this clear sort of square demarcation of where the cemetery used to be. It also appears in a number of other maps, which we're going to show you. And we're now on 1st Avenue between 12th and 13th Street. And this sort of darkish red building was once an appliance store. It was called Bloom and Krupp, and it was much larger. It had a number of showrooms sort of way in the back that were on a strange angle, and unfortunately you can't really see anything from the street, but behind there is still a sort of somewhat tilted building that encompassed where the lot lines were that used to run along Stuyvesant Street, and you can see it really clearly in an aerial photograph. So, and this is a modern building that was recently built, and it still adheres to those lot lines that sort of demonstrate where Stuyvesant Street continued running all the way to the East River. And finally, we're over here on 13th Street and 3rd Avenue. This is the site of the sort of famous, infamous Stuyvesant pear tree. There was a tree that stood here right about where the mailbox is, sort of behind where that guy is standing. And there's a pretty famous photo taken of the pear tree just before it was struck by two wagons and knocked down or uprooted, or something happened to it. That was in 1867. The tree had been there for over 200 years, and it was already a bit of a landmark, but it did not survive the wagon crash. There's a segment of it that has been sort of sawed in half, and you can still see it in the New York Historical Society. There's also a plaque, which you can see. Let me zoom in a little more, on the side of the building. And I have a photograph of the actual plaque, which there's a sort of some controversy about, because for many years the plaque was located on 10th Street and 3rd Avenue. And no one really knows exactly why, other than it was removed from this building because the pharmacy that was here had relocated, and now they're relocated back to this spot. So it's a little bit of New York sort of curiosity that there was a big kind of battle over the plaque and where it should be and why was it moved in the first place, since it was commonly known that this was the corner where this Stuyvesant pear tree stood. Anyway, it's back where it belongs, and there are even some pear trees. Here we are in the cemetery of St. Mark's in the Bowery. And this is this monument to Peter Stuyvesant. But this is not where his vault is. He's actually buried a little bit over here. And you can see the quite old plaque, which was where the family vault is located, just underneath here, covered by these sort of ominous looking stones. I'm not sure how you would get to it, maybe even from inside the church, but this is where he is buried. He died in 1672. At that time, there was another church standing here. It was a family chapel, and I don't think anything remains of it.